Welcome back to another episode of RNT Fitness Radio. Today's our 50th episode. So I want to say a massive thank you to all the listeners who've tuned in, subscribed, left a positive review, and shared it with your family and friends. It really does mean a lot, and I really do hope that you've enjoyed it just as much as we've enjoyed recording the podcast for you. So if you ever have any guest recommendations that you'd like us to bring on board, please do let me know and just drop me an email or a DM. Today I'm joined by Tom Hollis, who's one of my longest clients that I've worked with. I've undergone a number of transformations with him, and if you've read my article, Investing in Your Ultimate Physique, it was inspired through Tom, who likens building physique as investing in the stock market. And he's going to talk about this a lot today as we dive into the benefits of spending lengthy times building, spending strategic times reversing after diets, and what it takes to really transform your body while working in a corporate environment when you're surrounded by alcohol and often a lot of people who are opposing your goals. We also talk a lot about data and collecting the right data and ultimately using data to create the right approach for your lifestyle and being able to make objective decisions on how you take your transformation to the next level. So I think you're really going to enjoy this one, especially for those who are just coming off a fat loss transformation, or if you're a trainer, you're dealing with a lot of clients who don't know what to do after initial fat loss phase. This will give you a lot of tools to help educate them on the long-term benefits of muscle growth, building your calorie base, and educating them on how to live a lifestyle that fulfills your fitness goals while also living life at the same time. Hope you enjoy this one.
So on that note, why don't you tell us who is Tom Hollis?
Oh God.
We've already started.
We already started.
We've started.
We started. Okay, wow. Well, that's good.
I just like letting it roll, because then you're in the momentum and you don't suddenly freeze.
Yeah, that's true. Okay, well, that's interesting. So, who am I? Well, I guess if I define myself by a job, I'm a strategy consultant and UX designer. And so what that means is my job is to try and balance for companies science and art, or logic and creativity. And specifically what that means is I help companies take new technology and new digital data and all this kind of cool stuff, help them understand what it actually does, and then help them do something about it. Like, how can we use that for our own gain? That's my job. And actually that has a big impact on actually how I've approached training, I'd say, and how I think about training and how I use lots of different tools, technologies, and a lot of technology and data, to be honest, to help me do it. But outside of that, I'm 27 now, lived in London, but I've spent the last 3 months out in Austin, Texas, getting better at design, learning how to design and build websites and apps and make things look really pretty, so I can be a little more useful than consultants tend to be. And I think that kind of sums it up.
How you finding Austin, Texas then compared to London?
Oh, flipping love it out here. Like, it's not what you think Texas would be. Like, I had a very specific view of Texas when I kind of decided to come out here. I knew Austin was a little bit different, but it is like a little liberal oasis in the middle of a very red state. But everyone's just so nice down here. It's like sunny weather, sunny people. Whereas, maybe in London it tends to rain a lot, so we get some rainy people a little more often than not. But yeah, I love it. Food is dangerously great. But luckily enough, we're at the end of a reverse, so I've kind of got a little more room in my mind.
I think the weather thing's huge. I mean, when I go to California, I always notice a massive change in people's moods, right? And I always think that it's got to be down to the sun, right? It can't be anything else.
Well, they say that with the temperature as well, didn't they? They say like hot climate, you get kind of hot people, like spicy people, very like aggressive and chatty and whatever. And then when it's cold, everyone's a bit more docile. But yeah, I can totally see that. But I didn't know whether it was an Austin thing or a Texas thing or a United States thing, or everyone's just super nice and super welcoming, and they supersize everything for you. Again, dangerous. But I love it. I'm trying to figure out how to spend more time here in a more permanent vicinity. But
oh, really? You think you're moving out there then?
Yeah, I just think it's great. I think I've spent a lot of time in London and I've done that part of my career, and I always thought that part of my career was important and I needed to be in one of these big cities where all the decisions are made and things happen. You have ambition, people do big things, but particularly nowadays, that's not tied down to a geography. Like, you can be anywhere in the world and make a massive impact on other people's lives or livelihoods in a completely different location. Like, location is not done. So you might as well be in a place that optimizes who you are and how you think and how you operate. For me, at least right now, that tends to be more like Austin.
Yeah. I've been thinking whether it's it's a city thing or an American thing. And I do think it is an American thing, because people in America are genuinely a lot more friendlier than in Britain. Because in British people, they're just moody. They don't help each other out. We're always so serious. We're on a rat race, where it's a lot more chilled in places like that.
Well, the funniest thing is when, like, you go into a Starbucks, they genuinely ask you how your day is going. And the first time that happened, I couldn't say anything, and my American friend had to like butt in and be like, "His day's going great." Like, it was just such a shock. Usually, it's just, "What do you want?" "Okay, next." So yeah, it's just happier and sunnier. Obviously, got to try and cling on to the accent though, because I think I'm starting to get a bit of a twang.
Oh, really?
I'll introduce myself as Tom now as opposed to Tom, just because less questions asked. But
and is it working?
Yeah, it's like, everyone's just so nice, They do you automatically get about an IQ boost of about 60 because they just think you sound smart. So you can get away with saying some really dumb stuff, but just kind of
working with women.
Well, I mean, the accent helps, but then I start saying
you can say it. You can say it on here.
Yeah, exactly. No matter how great the accent, if you start saying just weird stuff, then they'll be like, "Okay, nice to meet you." But no, I personally, I'm related to lots of British girls, but sorry guys, I just prefer our American cousins. It's just everyone's nice and sunny, and
Okay, awesome. Let's go back into what the podcast is all about and talk about your physique. And we're on a sidetrack there, but let's talk about your journey over the years, why you first got into training, what your initial why was, and to talk about that journey and where you've come from, where you are now.
For sure. So I was thinking about this when you asked, and it probably actually started when I was 16, but I had no idea what I was doing. I was at boarding school, and we had a very small gym attached to the main kind of like basketball kind of style gymnasium. And then didn't really get anything from it. But, it was kind of at the time where as a teenager, you start trying to look after yourself a bit better for various different reasons. And then as it got to university, it was like a very superficial reason that I really got into it, because I didn't think I was fat, but I just wasn't happy with the way I looked. So it was a very superficial thing, which I think I always used to struggle communicating. So whenever I would speak to a trainer, if I was asking them a question, it would always be, well, I want to get better at sports, or I want to be healthier. But actually, really, I should have just been honest with myself and said, no, I'm not happy with the way I look. And that's totally okay. It's not a vain thing. It's just, it's just who I am. And so as I got into uni, sorry about that. It's my notifications going off the chain. So as I kind of got into university, and I really started putting more investment into what I was doing, and that came through the medium of more time spent in the gym. I was starting to buy more expensive supplements, or starting to buy supplements full stop. I was spending a lot of time trying to understand things a bit better. And at first that was kind of dabbling into men's health. And I remember very vividly going on holiday with my parents when I was about 19 or 20 with a copy of Men's Health, and the tagline on the front of it was "Burn fat while sitting by the pool." I thought, well, that sounds great. Like, that's totally my sort of way of training. And it was all about kind of metabolism building. And I was like, what the hell's metabolism? So like, I kind of toyed to my nerdy nature. It's kind of like trying to find, okay, what is that? And you find something else, and you dig into a blog and you find that. You're trying to build up this picture. Very quickly you get the idea that there's a lot of conflicting evidence out there. So through that whole university period where I was trying to learn, and I was in a very learning kind of state of my life, I was pulling in things like, I did a lot of German volume training for a while. No idea why, but I was like, well, look at this guy. He's massive. I'll do German volume training. And then I flipped into kind of chasing hypertrophy. And then it was like big, massive, like 6-set supersets was the thing. And I was just like flying around all over the place. And because I wouldn't stick with it, because I wanted that instantaneous 12-week results, and I didn't really know what I was doing, I would then immediately just switch radically onto something else. And, you know, in hindsight, I kind of lost a lot of my consistency from doing that. I then started to dabble a little bit with kind of in-person training, particularly when I used to go home for the uni holidays, and there was a local gym, I'd go in there, but I didn't really feel like I was getting anything more from them. Like the relationships and the contact I had just didn't really push a lot of trust. I was like, well, this is all kind of what I'm finding online, but I'm not really moving myself here. So what am I getting from you? Then the next big investment, I actually went and did online training with a very reputable firm. That was interesting because actually, like in hindsight, that was totally not set up for what I was. I think I was immediately put on 400 grams of carbs. I'd never even touched anything like that. And I was kind of what I think you might describe as skinny fat at the time. And so that was just like, whoa, hang on, this is just not me. And I'm sure there was a reason for it because I really trust the brand, and, you know, ultimately I found you through it. But that just didn't work for me at all. And so after about I did the 12 weeks, nothing really changed. So that really put me off. So then I kind of scratched my head for a while when I was about 22 at the time, I think. And then decided, okay, well, enough is enough. Like, this is really starting to have an impact on my confidence. And as my job is very confidence based, it's going to have a big impact on other parts of my life, and that's not on. So I got my bonus at the end of the year, and I put it all into a 12-week in-person transformation. And that's how I met Akash, right? That's how I met you. And the whole onus behind that, and I think I even said to you at the start, was like, I've read a lot and I've tried to understand a lot. And the more I've read, the more I've been confused, because there's just so much conflicting stuff out here, and it changes year on year as new stuff comes available. Can you just do the thinking and I will just do the doing? Like, I just want to focus on being as consistent as possible and focusing on process and going through it. And so that was the first big transformation. I think we took like a load off then. Like, I think I came down from something like 93 kilos to like the low 80s. It was chunky.
Yeah, you were chunky when you came to me. You wouldn't have thought you'd done a lot of training or research in the past, right?
Yeah. Well, I'd also been like attached to varsity teams. That was it. Like at my university, I'd done like varsity, and so I'd been through a strength and conditioning program. And the first thing you said was, "God, you deadlift like trash." Like,
I remember your technique was shocking on a lot of things.
I mean, like, looking back at it, I thought, yeah, that was a horrible deadlift. Like, how am I still walking? You know, based on that. But that was the first time where I thought I really learned how to train properly. And then as you shifted in R&T, I followed you because, you know, actually, do I trust the brand or do I trust the trainer? Well, Akash knows me more than the brand, so like I'll follow you. And then since then, what we've done, probably 2 proper cycles, I'd say, of transformation, so slimming down. I don't think we've done a proper bulk yet, but that's kind of where we're going into next, which is going to be interesting, because that's definitely new territory for me, at least with the, I think, scale and ambition we're looking at. But that's kind of led me back here. So I've done those 2 transformations. The first one was good, and it got me in a good state, and I was super happy with it. But for me, then I kind of got bitten by it, so it set the boundary for the latter one. And this last one's been really great, because I've totally felt that I had enough understanding in myself and how I worked. I had my system set up. I understood what, for me, had the biggest impact in the gym and on my plate, and all the stuff around it, like sleep. And then I've just started building on that. And now, as opposed to being much more of a need where I don't feel happy with myself, I need to fix something. Now, the whole process of kind of weight training and nutrition is now like a very exciting and interesting experiment for me. I like trying out new stuff to see, well, how does this work? It's like apple cider vinegar, for example. I've been dosing with that for since I came to Austin, for the last 3 months. And that has really helped, particularly as we've kind of ratcheted up the amount of food I've been eating. I got to a bit of a sticking point just before I came here, where I just couldn't eat the amount of food we were trying to push through my body. And that totally helps. I was like, great, well, now that's in the roster, and that's kind of helping out. So it's a much more interesting and fun and creative kind of experiment. You know, and I think I'm always throwing stuff over to you to say, well, can we try this? What is it? I've heard this. Is this worth trying? Like, probably gets annoying after a while, but like it's a much better and healthier relationship with training now, having done through that journey and found a kind of a happy place. than it probably was when it started, when it was a very need, worry based anxiety that I probably wasn't being very honest with myself about.
That's a really interesting point. I don't hear many people talking about relationship with training. People talk about the relationship with food all the time, but you don't hear about people's relationship with training. And I haven't really talked about it with anyone before. So that's an interesting concept, and how you went from having it as a need to something you just enjoy, and it's become part of a lifestyle, and you see the benefits. Then you do it for just enjoyment, curiosity, rather than a need to trying to fulfill something that's not there.
Well, right, and I think that really comes to the fore when you think about overtraining. So, for example, particularly when I was in that desperate phase, like think about it, right? You're kind of, it's at the end of a workout, you're probably knocking onto some arms work. So I'd be bicep curling. This was pre-used. This was before I knew what I was really doing, and I would chase the weight down to like 4 kilos, 2 kilos, or whatever. And that was probably just destroying my body. I was doing it every single session. Whereas now I think about it it's a healthy relationship with training. So I think about it in a longer term. So there'll be times where I do overtrain, particularly at the end of like a cycle, let's say, where, throw in an extra one. But I'm happy and content stopping with 3. Even if I don't hit progressive overload on one particular week, I'm like, no, this is part of a longer process. It's a sensible process. And it's not that kind of need, oh my God, well, I need to do this faster, or I need to exhaust myself, or I need to feel a burn. Like it's a much healthier and longer term vision view of training.
I mean, I was going to say that one of the biggest mistakes I think skinny guys in particular make, or anyone who's not really getting stronger or making progress in the gym, is confusing pain with progress.
Yeah.
That's why intensity techniques are so abused in the gym. Things like, like you said, you're ratcheting all the way down to 2-3 kilos, doing drop sets and force reps and any sort of intensity you can think of. And a lot of it is just because they associate that pain that you're getting with progress. And really, those intensity techniques are so hard to recover from and so hard to track, right? And someone who's like you, a data-driven guy who loves tracking, it's so hard to gauge whether you've made progress or not. Have you made progress with this drop set, or did you not? It's not a standardized variable, and I think the inability to track it is something that people fall short of, and they just think, okay, that hurt a lot. I was in a lot of pain. I was sore the next day, so I must be growing. When really they end up actually falling backwards. You know this, right? You're smiling at the camera, so because you can relate to it.
Yeah, because you want to feel like, particularly with the clients I think you deal with, who are they're ambitious professionals, they value their time very highly, and so they want to get the maximum out, right? Particularly in consult, we throw around the word leverage a lot, and it comes to you, but leverage is having a big impact using a very small variable, right? You want to like push a little bit and have that, have a big impact somewhere down the line. So if I think about that from a training perspective, you want to make sure that every single rep you're doing is contributing towards something. Like you don't want to waste it rep. And so, I understand kind of what it's supposed to feel like and how it feels, as opposed to, thinking that pain is that sort of signal, it's finding that different feeling, but that can't be taught. You have to learn it. And I think that's one of the hardest things is there's no, you can try and describe that as a trainer as best you can, but ultimately I've got to figure out what my brain registers as that mind muscle connection. I have to learn that, and that's going to take time. That's going to take getting it wrong. I can't, it's an experience I have to understand and then be consistent with. And even today, I don't think I'm consistent with.
Yeah, that's another really good point. In that, while we can take the thinking out for you, you've still got to have that level of self-awareness in your own body and understand, what foods feel good for me, what training stimulus feels good for me, what exercises feel good for me, how much sleep do I feel good on, right? We can advise, but you've also got to be self-aware of those things and then give the feedback accordingly, so we can use feedback to then make better advice, right?
Yeah, exactly. Totally.
So when do you think you mentioned that your relationship with training changed after the last transformation? What do you think it was that did it?
Well, I did that thing where everyone told me I would do, and I said, no, I wouldn't. I'd be totally fine. Where I said, well, when you get, ripped up, you still won't be happy. And I was like, no, I'll be ecstatic. I'll be over the moon. And I was, but I think once you hit that kind of that parapet or that goal that you've been searching for not just those 12 weeks, but probably years, to be honest, you then have to reevaluate, why am I doing this and what am I doing it for? And I think particularly after the first one, it then switched into well, now I've got it, how do I save it? And I knew that if I was going to save it, I had to think a lot longer term. It wasn't me trying to find the 12-week fix. It was me trying to sustain this for years and comfortably for years. And I think we had a conversation where I was trying to figure out what that was about. And you said, well, you're going to have to like get a bigger engine, because all these guys are showing me on Instagram, for example, they got big engines, so they can put away food and their body will just deal with it and chuck it away. So when I understood that and started looking at it, then it becomes a much more of a, you're thinking beyond 3 months, you're thinking beyond that holiday. And so by necessity, your attitude to the investments you make in your time and your nutrition and your training, all that kind of stuff just kind of shifts. And yeah, you're in a more comfortable place to do that because there's no sense of urgency, because you've hit that level. And if you've reversed properly, you've also kind of sustained that level. And I've been lucky, I think, that my reverses have been pretty successful. Bar the very first one I did, which was a dumpster fire and put me way back. But the last two in particular, I've found the knack of reversing properly.
I think everyone has that the first reverse is terrible. It's so tough. My first attempt with it was terrible. And the last time I did it, it was, I still had striatic glutes 8 weeks after while eating double the amount of food, which is something similar to what you experienced. So it can be done. It takes that awareness of how it feels and how to react to that feeling that your body has. And if you once you've been through it before, you know how to control that urge, right?
Yeah. And I definitely caught myself slipping. I think the second so after the first one we did, the first real one at RNT, like I looked at that picture, I think it was from December, and I was like, how the hell did it get like to that without me noticing? Like you don't.
You kind of creeps, yeah.
Yeah, you're in that success mode. You're like, well, I'm done now, and then you kind of like forget it. But it's like, no, this is your body. This is your interface with the world. Like, this is the first thing people see, whether you like it or not. When you meet them, like you can't just kind of drop that stuff. If you want it to be a priority, it has to become a priority to adjust accordingly. So,
but I also think the reason why you've done so well all this time, and the reason why you're happy, you're content with your physique, is because you went through that period of being what I always say, fluffy, right? You put in a long time building muscle and accepting some fat gain. And sometimes when you're in the higher body fat percentages, you almost look like you don't train sometimes, right? In reality, once you diet down, it all kind of comes together. But how did you overcome that kind of issue of fat gain, knowing that long-term goal was there? But how did you overcome the kind of the mental barrier of, okay, I need to accept some fat gain now? Because at this point you were still quite not there, right? And this is a big problem that people have, especially when they get lean for the first time and they say to me, okay, I want to build an amazing physique. I want to get bigger and more muscle, but they don't want to let go at the same time. Yeah. How do you kind of deal with that and balance accordingly?
So I think the number one thing I did was I started to follow my Instagram. Like everyone's got their Instagram people that they follow, and it's like, oh God, this guy's great looking. My two are like Mitch Edel and Dan Burke, right? Those are my two now. And contrary to what I was looking at beforehand, where it was like, David Gandy, and you kind of just see him dressed up the whole time, and he always looks great because he's a mom. That's what he does. I follow like people who train like professionally. They're either trainers themselves or they compete. And so I followed them for a longer period of time. And I realized that there are moments where and both of them are very good at showing like the honest side of it, where they don't get out of shape, but they lose their abs, and that's totally fine. Because it's like, well, I'm doing that now, and because through the season, this is why I'm going to do it. And so it suddenly became okay. And I saw that these people that I was idolizing in the bodybuilding world or the fitness community were going through the exact same thing that I was. They weren't cut up to pieces the whole time, that kind of thing. And I think people will say things like that, and they're like, well, of course, like, it's all for Instagram, it's all airbrush and all that kind of stuff and whatever, but they don't really believe it. They're going through the motions because they feel that people need to hear them say it. Actually following those people and seeing them through their own whole cycle really helped me get comfy with the idea that this is going to come back. The second was, having done the first one, the second one was much easier, because I knew that regardless of what happens, we could turn it on a dime and go in the other direction and go back to kind of base camp. So if we were trying to climb a mountain and we got to a point where it just got ridiculous, I knew that you knew how to take control of me, and I knew how to put it into kind of action or production to bring me back down to a place where I was comfortable. So that trust was there, and I think you only built that up over a long period of time. And what I've been training with you, crikey, like 3 years now, 3-4 years getting on. So that really helps. Other than that, because it's a long, slow process, and also it's harder to track, and I'm sure we'll get on to the data tracking in a second, but when you switch out from getting lean, when you've got two very clear yardsticks to measure yourself against, you stand on the scales, you measure your umbilical, and then you take those photos and you can see very clearly incremental improvements. It's a very visceral feedback mechanism, because you can really see things moving. When you're going in another direction, your weight fluctuates a lot more, so you can't like track that so consistently, at least mine does. Progressive overload is an absolute nightmare to track. It's something I'm trying to figure out some science behind at the moment. Like, how can we put something that's, balanced around how we can track progressive overload, and what technology can we use to do that? So it's a very hard thing to understand where you're going, so you don't get that momentum of constant progress. So getting comfortable with that was probably the hardest thing to do. It's always hard. It's never going to get easy because they're gone and all that kind of stuff. But
what was interesting is when you did last week, when you said, okay, I've lost a bit of condition. And yeah, you lost a little bit, right? I mean, you still had abs, but you also said you were significantly stronger that week.
Yeah, we could see it. I got 7 personal records in one session.
Exactly. So and that's another reason why people need to sometimes let go of that ultra low condition, because your body's not going to get stronger when you're that lean and that depleted. It does well with a bit more body fat and improved leverages. And this doesn't mean getting super fat, but it means not trying to stay in photo shoot condition year round, right? Which is just it's just perpetual dieting.
That's the whole investment thing that we talk about, right? It's like you got to put some away, right? You got to start saving at some point, and that sucks. It means you can't buy nice stuff, but you're doing it because you know that down the line you're going to have a bigger body, and it's like, how interesting, right? If I've got sitting in a bank account earning 2%, that's great. So that's how I thought about it. It was more like, I know that I need to build a bigger engine. I need to build greater muscle mass density, because it means that I can operate at a higher running level, which means I can eat more pizza and nothing will happen to the same degree that I used to. I used to eat I used to look at a slice of pizza and the next day I'd balloon up and it would be a nightmare for a week. Now I can and I can knock away half an 18-incher sharing it with someone, and I can get away with it. Of course, I've made space in my macros, etc., and I've adjusted and all that kind of stuff. But I can definitely see the impact of food on my body has changed.
So you've talked about this investment in a very abstract way, right? In a metaphorical manner. So just for the people that might be confused, can you just say in layman's and a bit easier? So in fitness speak.
In fitness speak, yeah. So I think the rules of investment are that you do little and often, and you try and latch on to what's called the power of compound interest. And that's basically because we measure everything in percentage terms, like a 2% return a year, right? So in year one, you'll have £10 and you'll return 2% and you'll get, £10 and 2p, so not, 10,000 20p. So not a great deal. But because you're adding 2% onto a bigger number every time, that thing grows exponentially. And that's that wonderful curve you get when your pension provider tries to sell you an ex-pension product. They're trying to sell you a really nice steep compound interest curve. And it's why you should, be methodical and consistent and save a lot and all those wonderful things. So when I given that I'd worked in and around that industry and tried to find technical ways of improving that process, I tried to bring the same sort of things across. So it was looking for the long term, understanding that I needed to make lots of little investments now, and that my kind of if my pot got bigger, the incremental returns on it would equally get exponentially bigger. So essentially, I knew that if I made a sacrifice today and I lost, a little bit of conditioning, I knew that I would be able to have a higher burn rate or a higher engine to run with, right? And so that meant that my natural eating level was of a much higher level than it would be otherwise. That meant that I had more freedom for the rest of the things in my life. It meant that training could still be a priority, but there was more room for things like being more social, or eating out or eating what I wanted, or not feeling as guilty when I when I, shifted some macros around and ate something a bit more. So I saw it as okay, well, it's going to be a bit of uncomfort now because I'm going to focus on getting less lean. And that's difficult for me personally because I've spent so much time and so many years trying to be lean. But I know that down the line, I'm going to be that much more happier. And I think I posted that chart in the RNT community that kind of showed the results of our last reversal. So a couple of weeks ago, I was eating the exact same caloric profile and still getting leaner. Like naturally, if I'd sat at that level, I think we would have just naturally kind of run down by 0.2 of a kilo a week or whatever that I was eating when I was at full bulk in the last cycle. And that to me was like, yeah, that's the investment coming to fruition. I'm able to eat an absolute ton of food. I'm able to enjoy my food because I've got so many calories to play with and so many different kind of macro profiles that I can enjoy food a lot more. And so actually I've become much more of a foodie, and I've been much more explorative, particularly at home in London. Like I go out for dessert just, to go and eat it because I can, because I've got enough space to do it and without really compromising my overall training physique. And that's because I got comfortable, or forced myself to get comfortable with making that investment and getting a bit bigger, and yes, losing a bit of definition to have a bit more freedom further down the line.
Awesome. I think that's a great lesson for people who've just finished transformations and they're looking at what you finished fat loss transformations and they're looking at what the next step is. So what are the keys to a successful reverse diet?
God, getting a goal set up. I think, as I said, you've got a very visceral goal. It's very clear to track when you're cutting. And then when you come into reversal, there's no real, you're looking at so many different things and nothing's as consistent. I think if I look at the graphs on my last two cuts, they're pretty consistent, bar a few kind of bits where I slip, but they're pretty consistently down. The reversals are all over the spot. I think it's harder to track, and therefore, particularly for me, it's harder to get momentum in. I think that makes it more difficult, but I think the way you counter that is by not treating your shoot or your goal or your peak week as the finish line, because it's not. So my goal was never to hit a point. It was always to hit a point and sustain it. So I gave myself like another 6 weeks on the other side of that, of where the real finish line was. And I think mentally that meant I could kind of stick with it because it didn't feel like great, I've released and all that kind of stuff. It's now wonderful. I think even when I had holidays, I always used to push our peak week 3 weeks before it, which gave me 3 weeks to reverse out of it and settle. Because I knew that from the first couple of times I'd done it, immediately after that peak week was my danger zone where I was going to fly around a bit. So I think preparing yourself mentally that the finish line isn't actually that shoot, it's probably 3 to 6 weeks afterwards, and then even longer if you've got other goals to rally around. And those two things kind of help. But honestly, I think I've also been just very lucky. I think my body tends to be good at sucking up that extra nutrients in a fairly good way. So I've put some of what I've done down to luck, but then looking back at it, you kind of understand the things that we've done through those processes. It's been very low and slow. There are times where you say, oh, cool, like another extra 25 grams of carbs on a Monday check-in. I'm like, I'm not sure. But if I stick with it, it kind of works out. Whereas, I mean, you probably know the science behind it way more than I do, but if I think you're overly cautious, maybe your body just gets used to eating itself and you kind of get stuck in that kind of...
Yeah, and you don't want to keep dragging out the reverse a bit too long. And, if you stay too cautious, you're essentially just dieting. Because all it is, really, the beginning bit after a peak per se, is you're just reducing the calorie deficit. So if you go super slow, you're just prolonging your body being in a deficit, which is why you won't feel good. Your sex hormones will still stay down, your sex drive will be down, your energy will be low, you still have that fatigue in your legs and your overall body, your sleep won't be good, you'll be weak in the gym. So it's important that people don't drag out the reverse diet process too long. And I wouldn't really go longer than 4 to 6 weeks, and make quite aggressive jumps to get back to there. And it also depends on the psychology of the client. So if you've got someone who's very in a very precarious position after dieting, where you just know they're going to go off track, then it's probably better off doing a faster reverse just to give them the calories on a daily basis, so they don't feel the urge to keep binging. Whereas if you've got someone probably like yourself now who can handle the slower approach, it's probably the more optimal one. And if you can do it, then it is going to work better. But it's important that you take into account the different psychologies that clients have.
Yeah. And I think, yeah, not having that holiday bang after your peak week is probably good. Because I know that a lot of people have a holiday or a shoot or all those kind of things in mind immediately after training.
Yeah, I agree. In 2014, I went to an all-inclusive straight after I competed and gained 7 kilos in 7 days. So it wasn't,
my Lord.
Yeah, it wasn't very nice. And you know, leading into it, I was thinking, I'm going to nail the reverse, nail that, go on holiday, I'll be good. But when you're on holiday, now you suddenly don't have a goal. Your hunger hormones are all over the place, and you got food around you 24/7. You're going to go off track, right? Yeah. So it's better just to give yourself 3-4 weeks before you go away or plan a break.
So I think one of the things that I certainly had to learn when coming out of that was where my carbs are going to go, because I experimented a little bit, particularly on the first one. Was like I as more carbs came in, I spread them out evenly to see how that worked, and then I lumped them around training to see how that worked. And I actually found that my body reacted best to having them grouped around training, and then quite a high carb meal at night, because it helped me sleep better, it helped me kind of recover and rest better. But I think having the time to figure out how that works also helps with a more successful diet, because I imagine people's bodies will adjust or be more sensitive to having those extra calories, particularly the carb style calories at different points of their day or different points around their training, depending on their individual hormones, nutrition, digestion, and even psychology and physiology, right? So that I think really helped, and understanding what my body in particular, when I was giving it more food, where it really needed it, was helpful too. And that was a little bit trial and error and a little bit science.
So a lot of your findings came from data, right?
Yeah. So
could you expand on how you've used data to help not only your focus in the longer periods, but in the fat loss areas, the muscle building phases, the reverse phases, and what do you think like the best source of data people should be tracking?
For sure. So for the privilege of my job is that I'm like a big data nerd. Everything we do these days, particularly in that kind of high pressure business realm, everything has to be based around data. And it's useful because it gives you the confidence when you're moving in a particular direction that something is working. So I was like, well, great, I need to bring this to my weight training. And so it's probably where I'm a little different to a lot of other trainees. Lots of trainees have like a gym app, and they track, so some kind of track their calories. And then people might do like a weight check-in like once or twice a week. I will measure everything every day. And I'm not looking at the individual reading every single day, because that is not helpful for your psychology. Because if you've popped up by like half a kilo because you've had more water one day, you're going to start panicking, going, well, I put on weight. No. That's absolutely not what I do. But I track daily, and I track as much as I can daily. So weight, umbilical, I try and track my sleep where I can, or understand where it is. I track when I trained, I track what I trained, I track the weights, I track, now I've actually really got into MyFitnessPal. I was very against it at the start because I hadn't quite got their system set up. But I track my meals, I try and time them out so I have the ability, if I need to really understand what variables are causing what in my overall physique. That's a pain to set up. It takes a bit of time, but it means that I can now, when you stretch them out over a long time, you start adding all these data points together, and you see some very clear trends of what works and what doesn't work for me. I think one of the best examples of that was when we looked at the last reversal. So you can see a very nice, like, kind of downward trend in weight as macros came down against it. I think it's on it's actually on our case study. And then it kind of becomes a sticking point in May where I kind of get a bit stuck. And that was because I basically hadn't cut out alcohol yet. So I was still, because of my job or because of social life, I was still going out and like having a drink. And I hadn't really accounted for that properly in my macros. I definitely undercooked it. And then you can see, like, I was teetotal. Actually, I was teetotal in May. I totally removed alcohol. You could see the graph just come straight freaking back down again. And that was the last bit that really pushed it towards peak week. Now, being able to see that and map that out and map that against other kind of things helped me understand what I was doing wrong, where I wasn't optimal, and how I could adjust to fix it. That ultimately gave me a better transformation second time around than first time around, because I just had a better understanding of what I was playing with. Things like I use Strong as my workout app. It's probably one of the better ones, but I'm actually trying to design a better one at the moment, being I'm now a UX designer, to think about how we can actually collect data from trainees in a better way. I'm also looking at a couple of ways with a couple of friends to figure out how we can track progressive overload. Right, because particularly from an R&D perspective, that is like, progressive overload with consistent form over a long period of time. That's how you get success. So we're trying to find ways with things like wearable technology. Like, can we attach a little kind of motion tracker to a weight, and then we can track the range of the weight. We can track whether it's listing left or right, forwards or backwards. We can travel the speed. We can travel the speed difference between the first rep and the last rep, so we can see how consistent you are. Can we use that to build a data science model that will give a rep was, or how good a set was, and how that changed over time, and how that changed with weight, and all that kind of stuff, so we can start getting more accurate data on that growing phase to the same tune that we've got on our cutting phase, where we can quite easily see the kind of weight coming down and measurements changing, all that kind of stuff. So I use it as a way both to inform myself as to what my body does and how I can tune it to be the best it is, but also as a way to give me momentum. Because when I can see the numbers start coming down over a long time, I know that we're heading in the right direction. That gives me the confidence to keep going and to be patient and to persist and to keep going through that process. I also think, to be honest, it helps keep your trainer honest, because like if you can all kind of see like data moving in the right direction, that is the thing that tells you. It's not people being confident or knowing or having a gut feeling, but it's right there in the numbers. You can see it. I think that just helps get everyone on the same page, and you're always going to have them. Like I did when I didn't cut out alcohol, but understanding and seeing what that downward trend looked like really helped me push through to that next phase.
So you're essentially using it to keep me on my toes.
Yeah, I got to keep you on your toes. It's going to get boring otherwise. I think the other interesting thing actually, and it kind of ties into the trouble I think lots of people have when they eat out, or they have to go for meals. There's an app I've started using called Nutrifix, and they help you find meals around you that fit a particular macro profile. So you can say, well, I need a meal that has like 10 grams of carbs, 50 grams of carbs, 10 of fats, and 30 of protein. And they'll scrape a lot of data, I think, from the web or like from menu items, and they will show around you what you could go and eat that fits that particular profile. Like it's much easier if they kind of give you a range sometimes, and they're working on it. It looks like, giving you a very specific number, but it's because so many more companies are now freely publishing their nutritional data online. So, you could go and look at Itsu's full menu and look at the macros that sit in it. And it's making it much easier if you want to kind of build non-prepped or non-prepared meals into your routine, to be able to do that, particularly in big cities or with big brands.
I had no idea.
Always a great one.
Is that what you're using in London, or is this only in Texas?
Yeah, no. London. I don't think it even works in Texas. I mean, in Texas, you basically just assume there's 30 grams of fat and everything.
Have you posted that in the group before? I've never seen that.
No, I've only been playing with it recently, but I think it's a great idea. And I had something similar, because that was the problem I had. I was like, well, I kind of want something. It's Friday. What can I get that's around me? And it'll be a long kind of like research job going through Itsu's online menu, or going to like Nando's online menu, and then trying to figure out how many macros are in that and what it can look like. And this app is it's good. It's still early, but it's definitely been definitely works. It's definitely helpful.
If it's good, then post it in the group. It'll be good to hear. I think it could be useful for a lot of people.
But
I'll let you decide if it's good or not. And on that note, in terms of you mentioned you're working in the city, you want to try and balance the city life with staying in shape. What kind of advice would you give to people who want to have that balance?
I'd say plan your fun. Just like account for it, because it only really impacts you. It only really impacted me when I didn't plan it. And then really understand your alcohol. Because particularly for city people, and it's changed a little bit now that health and fitness has become such a big cultural phenomenon, particularly in those big cities. It still can just wear you down on the 8th time of explaining why you're not drinking and why that's fine and how you're going to have fun without having to have a drink. Like, there's sort of culture around it, and sometimes you just don't want to have to deal with it. So I remember actually when I was first doing this, I used to ask the bartenders, can you just like put sparkling water in that, but make it look like it's got vodka in it? So like, give me a straw and give me a stir and give me a whatever. It's just like, I've had up with the questions. because, and people just don't really, particularly on the first one, they don't understand. Once you've gone through 3 or 4, they kind of understand, oh, well, Tom has his fitness thing and he's obviously on a swing at the moment, he's dieting, and that's all fine and cool. That's just who he is. But up front, particularly when you're in that sensitive stage, it can get annoying, and also it just batters at you and wears you down, which you definitely don't want when you're trying to deal with all these other kind of stressful stresses you're putting on your body. So I think plan it. There's absolutely no reason that you can't do it. I do my meal preps in 2 hours on a Sunday while watching the American football. And I have enough in there now to make it interesting and not get bored. I remember when I first did it, I was super strict. I think I was, it was like I would take 3 boxes to work a day, and it would be chicken and broccoli, and that would basically be it. And then if we had carbs, I think I'd found these buckwheat pancakes and I'd eat them around.
I remember those buckwheat pancakes,
Yeah. It was like,
why you hate those.
Yeah, there's like eating cardboard, but I was just being so super strict. And one, I kind of sucked it up, but I totally appreciate that that's not for everyone, and also the person you're sitting next to also has to deal with that, which is not fun for them. But I think people get a little intimidated by meal prep sometimes, because you go and you see these like people who create these ornate spreads of days and days and days of the most colourful gourmet meals that you could possibly have, and you think, well, crikey, I'm not doing that. And you look at the price tag of things like that, that is really expensive to deliver. But there are ways, once you figure out, of creating something that's really super cost effective, but helps you stay on track. So for example, I think I posted on my Instagram recently, like my staple breakfasts. I have a base of kind of bagels and egg whites, and because I buy it in sufficient bulk, it costs me less than £1 a day or something for breakfast. But I've also got enough on top that I can customize it. So if I'm feeling like something sweet, I'll put cinnamon on top of it. If I feel like something savory, I'll put like a layer of mozzarella and chives on top. So I can get a bit of variety whilst keeping the base the same without really spiking the price of the meals. Because particularly when you're bulking, that stuff gets really expensive really fast. So you've got to find ways of keeping it interesting but cost effective.
No, I think there's some really good nuggets there for people, especially for those in the longer term phases. I had one question on data. If you're not a data guy, what would you say to someone? Because not many people are. Not saying not many people, but they're either people data guys or they're not, right?
Yeah.
What would you say to people who aren't very data driven? Or can you not really relate to it?
To be honest, I think it's being in the technology industry, we try to make it as hard as possible for people to get into it because we want to protect our jobs. And so I wouldn't be intimidated by it. I can totally see, I would encourage people to at least try it out, because it's just tracking stuff and then putting it into a graph at the end of the day. And I think I've even said in the R&T group, I'm happy to make all the charts. So I make available just easiest templates. You can just put in your own numbers and chart it, because ultimately it's simple stuff. It just sometimes looks intimidating, particularly when people do complicated things, but it's a complement to the overall, bit. So if I come back full circle, and, my job is to try and be logical and creative and try and marry those two things together. I think there's a great Poliquin quote where he said, learn the science, experiment with the art. And that's exactly what it is. Use the science as your base, but then know on top of that, there's these things that you just kind of feel and that intuition that you want to try and build into. But I think the two together are much more powerful than trying to rely on one. Sometimes the data lies. Data is man-made, right? We collect it. We choose what to collect. We choose how we collect it that has an impact on what it tells us, the story it tells us. So it's not perfect, but I think it's a complement alongside the intuition I get from a trainer who genuinely knows what they're talking about, and me kind of understanding how I'm feeling today and how that looks. And I know I've spiked this week, but that's probably because of that one meal because I didn't sleep here. Being able to understand and to make decisions on that, I think, is ultimately a really powerful tool to have in your training arsenal.
Amazing. How has R&T changed your life?
I always didn't used to like that when people used to put that on their gym profiles, because I was like, well, particularly when I was shopping around for them. But R&T, and particularly UX, genuinely, it has changed so many things in how I do everything. And so I can't remember who said it, but someone says how you do anything is how you do everything. And how I train now has very clear impacts on how I work, how I interact with people, how I feel I can interact with people, and all those kind of things. So straight off the bat, there's the confidence thing I think lots of people talk about. And, I think for the longest time I was anti admitting that it was a superficial thing that I was going for, but that ultimately is what determined my confidence. And so being in better shape and feeling that I was in better shape totally helped with so many things to do with my work and my social life. So one, straight off the bat. Two, it's got me really interested in the body and how the body works and how we can improve it. And so I'm trying to figure out personally with the skills I have in technology and design to experiment with how I can help other people. So I think the saddest thing is not when people think they're fat, because people can choose what they think about their own bodies. It's when they want to make a change and they feel powerless to do so. That I think is the worst. And so, I really didn't want to post my transformation on Instagram because I was like, well, I don't want people to see that kind of thing. But I thought if there's someone out there who's like me, who is uncomfortable, but is more just frustrated with the fact that I'm spending a lot of time and effort and money here and nothing is working. Is it just my genetics? Am I going to be always this way? I mean, you can have bad genetics. I don't think I've got the greatest genetics in the world, but there are just ways that you can help. So if I can help those people, there's ways we can do it. So this finding new ways of bringing data into fitness and helping people who are that way kind of orientated to use their skills, use their understanding, trying to design these fitness apps and make them better, because I think no one's really kind of nailed it yet. I haven't quite figured out why. Like, it's just become such a big part of my life and a source of a lot of positive energy that I think I said to you after the second transformation, I said, I now need to find, in this kind of like period between going on a bit of a bulk, I need to find ways of taking the successful story of training and how I approach and apply that to other bits of my life where I need it, to my career or to my, to my social life, or how I interact with my family. And actually, to be honest, I don't think I'd be out here in Texas studying design had it not been for the experience and the positivity and the approach I've taken through training. So it's had very clear and demonstrable impacts on how I conduct myself in life, I'd say, which is a horrible thing to say and think about, because it sounds totally insincere and cliche, but it really has.
No, that's incredible. I mean, I think transforming your body is like the first step. And what we do in physical transformation is just purely a vehicle to deliver, holistic change in domains all across your life. It just forms that foundation. It gives you the habits, the structures, the discipline, the self-belief to make change in any domain in your life that you want to make improvements in. And I think it all starts with the physical, but it never ends up being just the physical.
Yeah, totally.
So what are your next goals?
So I think you already know this, but we're going to go on probably the most aggressive bulk I've been on when I return to UK, which is in a couple of weeks. I didn't want to do it in Texas because I thought that is just a recipe for disaster. There is too much good Mexican food and barbecue out here to do like a safe and slow bulk. So we'll wait till we come back to the UK and start getting back on the cardboard to do that. But I'm because I don't think I've ever really done one before. And I think probably like another 2 training cycles.
Well, that being said, you're still on over 3,000 calories a day.
Yeah, right. But I'm still what am I now? Like I'm at 79 kilos. So and that's down from I was used to be 90 and nowhere near the muscle mass. So God knows what I was like that then. But I think like properly going through a bulk, particularly with all the things I've learned about good training now, and particularly through this reversal cycle and being out here, my mind muscle connection is much better. My rep patience is much better. My rest is much better. My nutrition is much better because I'm supplementing more sensibly, like with the apple cider vinegar, with multi-nutrients on a more consistent basis. I think this time round versus the last time we went on kind of like a mini bulk and pushed it up to about 3,000 calories. I think I'm in a place to really squeeze out a lot of good stuff. And for me, probably I might have only 1 or 2 more years of training where I can really make that sort of progress before I start switching into the more advanced intermediate, and that's when I'm in your unlucky stage where I'm, eating an extraordinary amount and getting really fat and then getting like half a kilo of muscle at the end of it. So I want to try and squeeze out the beginner's gains, like for as long as I can. And I've got like a year, maybe 2 left of that lucky period before that starts going, because I want to try and make the most of it.
But man, it's the most bleak period.
Yeah, right. Well, for me, again, it's all build a bigger engine. So if I build a bigger engine, then it means just staying in a consistent, happy place is going to be easier for me in the long run. And so now that I feel like I've got the tools, I've got the know-how, I have a better understanding of how my body works, but obviously still learning. And I've got a coach who totally understands where my head's at and can read where I am and can know when I need to take some of the thinking away and know when it's good for me to bring some back because I'm interested in it. And when I learn, I think that I'm in a good spot to be able to really take a good swing at it. And see what happens, and then hopefully share the story so that we can help more people in the long run.
For sure, I think a lot of people are going to get a lot of value out of this one. It's been full of golden nuggets. Let's finish off on a rapid fire. So these are 3 rapid fire questions. First one, you've been talking a lot about food, and you're in Texas. So what's your favorite cheat meal right now?
Cooper's Barbecue down the street. It's not even the best barbecue joint in Texas or Austin by a long shot, but their cobbler is sublime. Like, I don't know what they do to change it. It's basically crumble. They call it cobbler, and it's 10 times better than crumble. I'm going to have to figure that out, but that is my favorite cheat meal, hands down.
Great. What's the biggest thing on your bucket list right now?
Move to Austin full time.
Awesome. Who should we have on the podcast next?
Oh snap! That's a hard one. I think there's one of Adam's clients is just like nailed an incredible like transformation, and Adam's been like repping on him really hard. Like
James Heath.
Blank on his name. Yeah, I think he's kind of my new benchmark for the next kind of round. So I kind of want to hear I want to pick out what the science is.
That guy's a freak. Yeah, that dude's a freak. Incredible. Awesome.
But I want some of that freaky nature. Like, how do we get that?
Choose different parents. Awesome. So if you've enjoyed today's episode with Tom and you've seen the value in it, please share it around with your friends and family and leave us a positive review. For more information, please head to www.rntfitness.co.uk. You can follow us more on Instagram at rnt_fitness or at Akash Fagela. And for those of you who want to follow Tom, where can they find you if you want to share?
I'm also on Instagram posting charts. I think my handle is Tom C. Yeah, I'll share with it in the notes.
Perfect. And yeah, from anything else you want to share, or you good?
The one thing I think that I probably didn't mention that really helped me was learn how to cheat well. Like when I was dieting, my favorite freaking treat was I took Quaker Oats So Simple. I think it was, what flavor is it? I think it's like maple syrup flavor, maybe. And I used to put a scoop of chocolate protein powder in that, mix that up. Genuinely tastes like cake batter, but has like good carbs, 0 fats, and like 30 grams of protein in it. So it's not even a cheat, but like that was good cheating, was something that really helped me during the diet phase that I didn't mention.
That's the perfect way to end it. Thanks for listening, guys.